Let's talk a little bit about some fraction basics. The first thing we want to talk about are the size of the whole. So here I have two identical pieces of Snickers bars, and you can see that the whole piece is the same size. So that means this piece is the same size as this piece. Those are equal wholes. If you look at this picture, you will see that we have different sized wholes. So if someone offered you half of a Snickers bar, you might think that you're getting half of this bar, which would not be the same as getting half of this bar. Clearly, if you get half of this bar, you would be getting more of the Snickers bar than if you got half of this bar. So you have to consider the size of the whole. For the rest of this video, we will assume that we are talking about the same sized whole. So let's say that I've made a cake. We're going to pretend that this Little Debbie snack cake is a whole cake. If I don't have to share with anyone else, then I get the whole thing. That means I will get to eat all of it myself. But let's say that I'm about to enjoy my Little Debbie snack cake and my daughter comes in and she says, "Mom, I want part of that." Now I have to make an equal share with her. And so I have to cut my Little Debbie snack cake in half. So she'll get half and I'll get half. That means there are two people sharing. And you can see that the denominator for those fractions would be 2. So this part is mine, this part is my daughter's, and we're both happy because we get some Little Debbie snack cake. So we have, this was the whole. If I were by myself, I get the whole thing. If I'm sharing, I get half and the other person gets half. That would be 2 people sharing. 2 is the denominator for that fraction. But then her brother comes in and he sees the Little Debbie snack cake just as we're about to enjoy it. And he says, "I want some too." So now we have to share between 3 people. If I'm sharing between 3 people, my denominator is going to be 3 because I now have to cut that whole into thirds. So 1 piece for me, 1 piece for sister, 1 piece for brother. So now we each get 1/3 of the whole Little Debbie snack cake. But then Mr. Scott comes in, and of course he wants a bite too. And really, now that we're sharing between 4 people, all we're going to get is a bite. Because I've taken the whole and divided it into 4 parts. 1 for me, 1 for sister, 1 for brother, 1 for Mr. Scott. Pretend that I'm perfect and all my pieces are the same size. So now we have each getting 1/4. The denominator is 4 because we're sharing between 4 people. So the more people that I have to share with, the smaller my piece gets. So the larger the denominator, the smaller the piece that I'm going to get. So in this picture you can see if it's just me, if I'm sharing with just myself, that's 1 person, 1 whole, 1/1, mine, all mine. But if I'm having to share with 2 people, I get half, the other person gets half. If I'm having to share with 3 people, I get 1/3, the other person gets 1/3, and then the final person gets 1/3. If I'm sharing with 4 people, we cut it into 4 pieces, so I get 1/4, another person gets 1/4, another person gets 1/4, and the other person gets 1/4. So the more people I share with, the smaller the piece I get. So here's the main idea of this lesson. You see that the numerator is the number of pieces. The denominator shows you the number of people who are sharing. The bigger that number is, the smaller piece that I'm going to get, because I'm having to cut the whole into smaller pieces so that everyone gets a little bit. So the big idea is the greater the denominator, that's this number, the smaller the piece. That's backward from what we usually think about. Usually the bigger the number, the bigger the piece. But in fractions, if the denominator is larger, the piece will be smaller.